NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play. What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bringing your latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. So it's been about 3 weeks since my last video. If you recall, I had said that I was going to go on a little hiatus because I was having ACL reconstruction surgery because NetsBoy tore his ACL playing in his men's league. Just like a professional athlete, because, you know, that's me. But anyway, I've been recovering over the last few weeks. Not that really anybody cares, and that's why I didn't post any videos. But now I'm about 70, 75%, and I'm walking around a little bit more. So I said, you know what? It's time to post another video because we need some NetsBoy videos. Yeah. So, you know, since my last video, though, the Nets have actually won some games. 4, to be exact, with wins over the Rockets, with wins over the drawing blanks. Help me out. Wins over the Rockets, wins over the Celtics. Well, actually, Hawks. Wins over the Rockets, wins over the Hawks, wins over the Celtics, and most recently, a win over the Pistons. So the wonderful Nets are, I believe, 4-13, or 4-13. So I don't know. They're still a very bad team, but at least they're winning some games now, and they're not the 76ers, who also just lost and have tied the New Jersey Nets record for 0-18 start. And I'm ecstatic. I want the 76ers to lose that 19th game so bad, being a Nets fan. I don't want the Nets to be considered the worst team, at least start-wise, ever. You know, I just don't. You know, so the Nets are 4-13. And when you look at a team like the Nets now in the last few games, there's really... The truth of the matter is, the funny thing is, okay, when you look at, they're not that bad of a team. I know it's weird to say that, and people are probably saying, come on, really? But if you watch the games, you've noticed that the Nets have really been in every single game, except for the game against the Celtics, the first game. They're in it. They're competing. They're competing. I mean, they barely lost to the Warriors. You know, they lost. They barely lost to the Cavaliers. You know, they barely lost to all these teams that are considered better than the Nets, and then they're hanging in there, and they're just not executing enough down the stretch of games, and that's one of the main things that they need to start doing better. But part of that is because they really don't have the best playmakers. Now, I know Joe Johnson is having a really good year when it comes to being technically a playmaker, as in making the right plays and passes for their teams, but he's not scoring enough. So it's great if you can be a playmaker for your teammates, but if you're not able to score the basketball, you don't become much of a threat yourself, so teams can sag off and anticipate your move that you will pass the ball, which has kind of been the case with the Nets down the stretch. And then there's Jarrett Jack, who is an okay playmaker as well, but he's like the opposite of Joe Johnson. He doesn't make the right pass all the time, but he's more of a scoring threat. So really, if you're a defensive team going up against the Nets, you're thinking, okay, if Joe Johnson has the ball, let's make him a scorer because he's proven he can't really do it consistently. So let's watch the other guys, watch the perimeters when he dribbles and penetrates. You know, let's let him go one-on-one with our defenders. Let's not send any help defense. And then Jarrett Jack, you do the exact opposite. Say, well, he's not the best facilitator, so when he goes one-on-one, you bring some help defense and force him to pass the ball. So that's the problem that I'm seeing with this Nets team right now, or one of the problems that this Nets team is their playmakers are okay but not good enough. And I think the Nets are one true playmaker away from really being a good team. Not a great team, but a good team, a playoff team. I mean, Brook Lopez has been fantastic. Thaddeus Young has been beyond fantastic. He's been great. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson is starting to come into his own. Jarrett Jack has been good enough at the point guard position. Joe Johnson can't seem to score, but he's doing other things all right. You know, the bench has actually been pretty poor. That's the other thing that we got. I'm going to go into in a second, but they're getting some good play, but they're just not executing well enough down the stretch of games, and they've got to figure that out. They need to grab themselves another playmaker. They need to make some moves. They better make some moves. Obviously, it's a little early to be making drastic moves, but look, Nets don't have a draft pick this coming draft, as we all know. It's traded to the Celtics, and they've got to make the playoffs. They have to. They have to at least try because they have nothing else to play for. Well, they're 5 games out right now at 4-13. They're tied for the third worst record in the NBA, so they got to start doing something. They really do. But you know what? If you don't want to, if you get rid of Joe Johnson right now or Jarrett Jack or any of those playmakers because they are okay, you got to fix the bench. If you look at the Nets bench, it started off pretty decent in the beginning of the year, but now it's just the most inconsistent thing I've ever seen. Bojan Bogdanovic, I don't know what happened to the guy. He started off great at the beginning of the year. He was averaging like 12 points a game. Now, in the last like 4 games, he's averaging like 6. And it's incredible. The Nets need him to score. He's on this team as a 6th man. That is his role on this team. And they're banking on him to give you 10 to 20 points a game. That's the truth. If Bojan Bogdanovic doesn't score 10 to 20 points a game, the Nets' bench is weak. Shane Larkin has been okay, but he still turns the ball over way too much. Andrea Bargnani is just hot and cold, and he actually left the game the other day with a hamstring injury. Thomas Robinson does his job of rebounding, though he can't really do anything else. Other than the game against the Pistons, Wayne Ellington is useless. And then, Sergei Karasev is complaining that he wants to get traded, allegedly, or his father is. And, I mean, the Nets their bench is just all messed up. Their starting lineup has been very good, in my opinion. Jack, Johnson, Hollis Jefferson, Young, and Lopez, they've been fine. But their bench is what's been hurting. If they could get a consistent bench performance from Bojan Bogdanovic and maybe, Andrea Bargnani, if those two guys, or maybe Larkin, if you can get a consistent 35, 40 points from that bench, which may sound like a lot, but if you're thinking about the fact that you're banking on Bojan Bogdanovic to give you 10 to 20 points a game, because they do, that's not that ridiculous amount of bench points. Maybe I'll say 30 bench points. If you can get 30 bench points, they'll be doing all right. But the Nets, it's just an inconsistent bench. One moment they're playing great, the next they're playing poor. And the truth is, I'm not sure where the Nets can go to improve their bench without trading away Joe Johnson. And I have a lot of ideas of trades involving Joe Johnson, as everybody knows. And I'm not going to go into that now. I'll save that for another NetsBoy episode. But, I like what Joe Johnson has brought to the Nets this year, but the truth is, like I said before, he's been just an average playmaker when it comes, because he's not a consistent enough scorer anymore. He's shooting about like 34, 35% from the field. He's been a great facilitator. He's not turning the ball over, and he's been a good shot creator for other people, but he has just not been the scorer that the Nets need him to be. And Jarrett Jack, look, there's a reason why Jarrett Jack is not a starter. Has never been a starter prior to this. Well, he has like a couple times. He's just not that good. He's good, but not that good. Jarrett Jack's perfect role is like a 6th man coming off the bench, a capable backup point guard who is capable of starting if needed. And that's the way Jarrett Jack is. But, he actually has played, probably, I would say, top 20 point guard in the league right now. So, he's not terrible. But when you don't have another consistent, playmaker, then Jack's just not good enough. Jack would be good enough if Joe Johnson was the old Joe Johnson, the way he was. When I say old, I just mean like 2 years ago Joe Johnson, not Hawks Joe Johnson. If he was like the 2 years ago Joe Johnson, Jarrett Jack at point guard would be fine, because Joe Johnson back then was a good enough playmaker and scorer where he could be the main focal point, and then Jack could be the second playmaker and second option. But right now, both those guys kind of are like level two playmakers, and there's not a lot of elite playmakers in the league, but there's guys that the Nets could go and get that are better than those two right now, and that's just what I see, and I think, like I said, I think if they can improve their bench and maybe get another playmaker, this Nets team could easily be a playoff team. But right now, as it is, the only way I can see the Nets turning things around is if they get more consistent play from Joe Johnson. If Joe Johnson can start scoring the basketball like the way he's capable of 2 years ago, then the Nets will be okay and they can move on. And if they can get Bojan Bogdanovic to play the way he's capable of playing, giving him 10 to 20 points per game off the bench, then this Nets team actually would be fine. And I would say that they could turn the season around and make the playoffs, because those are the two situations right now that I think are really holding the Nets back, is inconsistent bench play and a little bit more from their playmakers. But like I said, I like everything else I've seen from the Nets team. Other than really those two things, they've been in every game. The Nets could very easily, instead of 4-13, they could very easily be 8-9, the way the Nets have played this year. So that's just the truth of it. And so I keep my fingers crossed and my optimism high that the Nets can get on a little bit of a roll. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Moving on. So let's look at the next few games for the Nets, and let's see what we think, or what I think, because I'm the only one who gives an opinion. Tuesday, they play the Suns. That honestly, every game's a winnable game now for the Nets. I don't want to say that's a winnable game, that's not a winnable game, because after the way they played against the Golden State Warriors, every game is a winnable game. I think the Nets will probably lose that game against the Suns. I think I've seen the Suns play. That backcourt of Bledsoe and Knight is very good, and I think they're going to cause problems for the Nets. But we'll see what happens. But I'm going to say that's going to be a loss. Then they have the game against the Knicks on Friday. That's going to be a very exciting game. But I actually think that the Nets are going to win that game. And the reasoning is other than just a hunch. I think that the Knicks have looked very good this year. I think that they're a playoff team this year as well. Well, as well as who? They're a playoff team, the Knicks. But I just think that the Nets are going to catch them a little bit off guard. And I think the Nets could win that game. And then Sunday, they have a rematch, shall I say, against the Warriors, where they will probably get blown out, because the Warriors are not a team that's going to be like, oh, wait, this Nets team almost beat us last time, so we're just going to go easy on them. No, they're going to come out and try to destroy the Nets, so I think that's going to be a loss. So I think the Nets will go 1-2 the next 3 games, but like I said, every game is a winnable game for the Nets, and it's been very impressive. I've been very impressed of how they've competed. I just wish they had a couple more wins, and like I said, a few things bounced a little bit differently. Who knows? Perhaps the Nets could be a 8-9-ish team. So there you have it. That was my NetsBoy episode. I'm gonna have fun next week, and I have decided, for good spirit, because the Nets have ultimately been a pretty bad team so far, and they don't have their draft pick, to go back and look at the last 10 years and all the bad trades the Nets have ever made. And guess what? There's a lot of bad trades, bad moves they have made. And I think I'm going to rank them. Next week I'm going to do, for fun, a top 5 worst Nets trades in the last 10 years. And there's a lot, Obviously, this is all about the great Celtics, Garnett, Pierce, and Terry trade, and how much the Nets have loved that trade since it's happened. So I think I'm going to do that next week. I think that'll be kind of fun. And yeah, so keep your eyes open for that. And until next week, this is NetsBoy signing off.